everybody's favorite topic to talk about these days, The Last of Us 2.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody loves that game.
Wait, what's The Last of Us 2?
Hey, I'm Fingers.
Yo, this is Vector.
Hey, everyone. This is Days Ahead.
And I'm Nitroid. You're listening to the Kojima Frequency.
Who's played it? Who's played it?
I'm currently playing through the sequel. Played the first one. Enjoyed the first one. Didn't get super attached to the characters and stuff. It wasn't my favorite, but I did definitely love, just like the atmosphere and the acting and everything in the game. But yeah, the second one I'm playing through right now, and I'll save more of my thoughts for later. But I'm having a good time. As far as murderous things go, I enjoy all the killing, I guess.
You enjoy all the killing.
Yeah, like I said, I'm about I was about 2 dogs deep in the game. That's like a significant part. But yeah, for me so far, it's just been a really good stealth game. But yeah, that's where I'm standing right now. I haven't beaten it or gotten to any of the huge story beats yet. But yeah, I'm having a good time. The sound design alone is something worth just experiencing the game for, the snow and just the glass breaking. I don't know if you've seen the videos of that, but it's next level what they did with recording for the game. They use super dynamic ultra frequency range microphones to get some of those sounds for stuff. So
wow,
seems like nobody really has any qualms about the technical aspects of the game. It's
absolutely
on a technical level, it's definitely a marvel for sure.
Yeah. So
sure, if only games were just that. If they were just judged based on how technically proficiently they were made, I don't think we would be doing this podcast.
I haven't played 2. I did play 1, but I kind of took the...
And did you finish it?
I took the lazy... Yeah, I finished the first one, and then I took the lazy man's way out and watched all the cutscenes for the second one online.
Days, what about you?
So I ended up playing the first one on the remastered edition. I got it for free with my PlayStation 4.
Nice.
I'm sort of in Fingers' bucket where I completely understand why folks think it's fantastic. It's the best game ever. I thought it was great from a stealth perspective, but it didn't change my life. I am currently in team wait for this all to ride over so I can get this game for cheap. But I have watched the cutscenes like Nitroid, and I have a lot of thoughts about it and sort of the greater context of, writing and tropes, as well as comparing it to, the subject matter of this podcast, which is Metal Gear.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's why I've been following this game. I haven't played it. I had never intended to play it. I was a fan of the first game, but I'm following this sequel because it's clear to me that this is the divergent point, and then 5 to 10 years down the line, the future of the video game industry is going to trace some of its future lineage back to this date, and publishers are going to be looking at The Last of Us 2 for influence. Whether that's good or bad, they're going to say we want to make our version of The Last of Us 2, or if they're going to say we want to avoid a Last of Us 2 situation. That's why I have been following the all the news stories and the controversy around this game.
I've seen some conversation online about that, and specifically, it seems to be geared towards this sentiment of maybe AAA games have gotten too big, and that they need to be scaled down because you have all these concerns about budgets and crunch and release timetables, and so The Last of Us 2 kind of seems like the ultimate manifestation of that problem. And now everyone's kind of going, well, maybe it's time to start throttling back a bit and working on smaller projects, or at least figuring out a new way of going about this sort of design.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been saying that since the PS3 days. And they say game development budgets have doubled since the seventh console generation, and they say they're going to double again. And so now you're seeing a lot of pushback from that, and people they're trying to spend less money to make a smaller game, which I think is great.
Yeah, and I thought I was going to be like more like almost done with the game, but apparently I'm not even halfway through it yet. So like, yeah, these games are just getting a little too long just for what they need to be.
Right.
They're trying to make them these huge epic long things, and you know, you can make DLC or make the Last of Us like little standalone episode, you know, like they can
Left Behind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can do things like that to add on to the story, but like the huge, you know, singular project doesn't need to be that big and take this long to make. That's a big problem.
Speaking from a sustainability standpoint, it is hard from a creative perspective because, you know, you spend all these resources, time, and effort to create this game, and when you take the creative risk that games like The Last of Us 2 take, it kind of worries stakeholders and fans in a sense that, you know, we waited 7 years and how many millions for this?
Yeah. I remember I finished the first Last of Us in about 13 hours, and most people say it takes about 15 on average. And people are saying that Last of Us 2, the average completion time is 25 hours, which it doesn't make a lot of sense why they would nearly double the length of the game, especially when they purposefully set out to, and we haven't gotten into spoilers yet, but I feel like we should have some sort of marker when we do dive into spoilers. Yeah. But, you know, the route that they decided to take, where you go on this side story for essentially it's the length of time that it takes to complete the entire first game, where they do something that was obviously going to make a lot of people upset, and it's like they intended to do that. Like they were manipulating people just so that they would feel angry and upset at what they were doing. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So part of the reason I didn't play the second one, and I worry that by saying anything negative about this game, it's immediately going to be perceived as a political statement, because people can only seem to think in those mindsets now, which is really kind of irritating. You can't just or dislike something on its own merits. You got to be on a team.
Sure, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know.
And that's why we have all these disclaimers, by the way.
Yeah.
So we can say, you know, we're discussing this in full good faith as Metal Gear podcasters.
Yeah. But to be completely honest, I didn't care for the first one that much. I just thought it was an average action game with an average story. I wasn't really all that taken in by it. And I understand that a lot of people really love that game and love those characters and that story and that world, and great. It just didn't resonate with me, so that, you know, when the second one comes out and it becomes this huge controversy, I kind of don't get it, because I didn't think the first one was worth all that much fanfare to begin with.
And you kind of just don't care.
Yeah, kind of. It's just another game to me.
Yeah, it really seemed like it was just a lot of knee-jerk stuff at first. You know, you had the meme boys come through, and I think like the worst thing is like the leaks. Like when those come out and people are like, they like skim through it, and then like watching just the cutscenes, like, damn it, that's not a way to experience a game, like or to pick up anything from it. You know what I mean? Like if you were to just watch the Metal Gear cutscenes, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like you have to at least watch a compilation of gameplay that connects those cutscenes. Otherwise, you're just lost. You're like, oh, okay, we're here now, and
yeah,
it felt like,
and that's fair. You know, that's why any opinion I have on the second one, you know, take it with a grain of salt, because I didn't play through the second one. I did watch the cutscenes, and that's not the full experience. So,
and that's not so much on you. It's just more on like on the community when people do that type of stuff and then just like run with the memes. And like, of course, I enjoyed all those memes. They were great.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to like, people are like, oh, I'm not gonna play this game now. It's got a sex scene in it. Oh, this chick's kind of muscular, and it's like all these like weird non-facts started going on, like the Neil Druckmann self-inserted himself in that scene, and it's like, first of all, no, and then there was, you know, the whole Abby was a trans person, and it was like, okay, but that's not even the case. You know, it's like that was a whole nother character. So then those two things connected, and then it's now Neil Druckmann self-inserted himself into a sex scene where he's banging a trans character. It's just like, what the fuck? And like that, so
You know
like
what it
that
seems
came from
like?
like the whole, when people first released that whole scene and people ran with it, and that's what all those memes came from. And it's
You
just
know what
like,
it seems
wow.
like are it seems like two sides of a dumb argument constantly straw manning one another.
Yeah.
And it somehow turns into a game of telephone.
I love telephone.
And so that's how you get all the weird interpretations and rumors.
People straw manning on the internet.
Right?
And it's just like the Ray Liotta meme, like where he's just like cackling, laughing. That's pretty much like how everybody is behind all of it. It's just like, damn it, we're hurting game sales. I don't like this. It's like then you've got all these people like, I'm not even going to play it because it's got that one part in it. And it's like, that one part's not even a thing that you think it is. I don't know. It's just getting a little ridiculous on that aspect.
None of that has anything to do with why I'm not interested
Exactly.
in the game.
Yeah. And that's the thing I said. I know that's not against you, but it's just like this, the meme culture of it is just like, God damn it, fellas. Like,
So before we continue, I do think that we should make like sort of a point where we're like, okay, let's talk about spoilers now.
yeah.
I guess that point is now.
Spoilerville, everybody. They're coming in fast and hot right now.
You guys need to edit in that like alert noise.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
I got you.
But yeah, so I think the reason why we're all here to talk about this is not just because it's buzzing and the gaming community, memes aside, but also because it's clear that Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog made an attempt to use an interactive medium to tell a somewhat controversial story.
Right.
As Kojima fans, we all know this tale, so much so that we actually pulled together a Google Doc the other night, and we kind of put together how these series kind of compare in terms of presenting their narrative and how successful or unsuccessful they are. So with that being said, I'll leave the floor to you guys, because I just wanted to make that checkpoint before we kept discussing in case anything slipped out.
Well, a lot of people have brought up the comparison with Metal Gear Solid 2 and the bait and switch in that game. In fact, you even showed us an interview with Druckmann where he mentioned that Metal Gear Solid 2 was kind of an inspiration for that.
Correct, yeah.
So that kind of got the ball rolling on the discussion there. But there's a lot you can compare and contrast between those two games and how they approached that bait and switch element.
I think a few episodes ago, in fact, when the leaks started coming out back in, I think, like February or March, I came out and I was like, and this is just to kind of like spark the discussion, but I came out and I was like, this is like if Raiden came out of nowhere and just beat the shit out of Snake, and then you play Otacon, and play,
right.
and you have to chase after Raiden, and then all of a sudden you have to play Raiden, and then everybody was like, Chelsea, shh, we don't want to talk about that until we actually have a Last of Us 2 episode. But
for me, it felt more like, okay, imagine Liquid curb stomps Gray Fox in the Rex, and then there's another disc 3 and 4 where you play as Liquid. Imagine that. Or he blows Meryl up.
And then Otacon walks up to him at the very end and goes, "It's okay," and then walks away from Liquid. And that's the thing. I've had the ending spoiled for me. I get why people are pissed off, but for me, that's like they're like, "Oh, that's such a trope to walk away." It's like, you mean the revenge story isn't a trope? You mean like we're just doing a Kill Bill in that case? Like, every story is definitely already been told. So you can call it this trope or that trope, but they all fall under a trope. It's just like a weird argument for me. And I think as a character, like growth, Ellie has done enough killing at that point to walk away from Abby. It's kind of like she's like, shit.
The problem I had was that it didn't seem earned. So this, just to kind of reiterate,
I guess watching the
something-
cutscenes, you're not going to see that type of growth in the character dialogue in between, because they do a lot of hopping around. Here's the big.
It was like a gameplay mixed with cutscene
cool.
sort of thing. So yeah, I got the thing. I just didn't have the controller in my hand. But again, take everything I say and feel free to discount it because I didn't play it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing kind of the growth and like they do a lot of flashbacks actually where they go back to where Ellie and Joel are just like chilling and happy and stuff.
I liked those.
Yeah. That's making me like appreciate Joel, and it's giving us a little more time with Joel because they definitely cut that shit short. You only get like an hour or 2 hours. I think I was an hour and a half in when they killed Joel off, and I was like, oh, okay, it's that quick. And for me, like I said, this wasn't like my fave or anything like that. So I wasn't like crying when Joel died. I was like, oh shit, that sucks. It was kind of just like watching The Walking Dead when Glenn died. I was like, oh, all right, that wasn't.
Oh, they're killing Glenn today.
Like, damn, that was pretty gruesome.
Is it 6:30 already? Oh, time to kill Glenn.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of desensitized to it. You know, like.
Yeah.
I watched Solid Snake put a fucking gun in his mouth. I've seen worse shit. Okay.
I guess when we bring MGS2 into this equation, and that whole
well, first, before we get into that, we should actually explain a little bit of what people are upset about, just in case there are people that haven't actually seen it and who don't care.
Yeah.
And who are more interested in Metal Gear than they are The Last of Us, and they're like, why are these dudes talking about The Last of Us? So I'm going to try and make this as quick as I can. But, okay, so Joel, the protagonist that you play as in the first game, he gets killed with a golf club by this new character, Abby, who turns out to be the daughter of one of the surgeons that Joel killed in the first game. And so Abby's out for revenge. Joel saves her life. And then she murders him brutally.
Yeah, she's like
because she's been looking
out on
for him.
Patrol, and then like all of a sudden gets like swarmed by all these infected, and then he like takes her and he's like, "Hey, come on, let's go," and saves her. And then they go back to her spot, and then they somehow reveal that they start introducing each other. He's like, "I'm Joel," and they're like, "Oh, you're Joel. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. Hold on one sec." Yeah, and then she gets a shotgun and blows off his knee and then tells, dude to tourniquet it. It's really dark and really, like, if you're a Joel fan, that's a pretty hard scene to watch. I get why people are pissed, but for me, that wasn't enough for me to start a petition to rewrite the story. Like, I don't know.
That's hilarious, by the way.
Yeah,
that
that
there's
petition
actually a petition. There's always a petition.
Yeah.
It never does anything.
There's always a petition.
Stop making petitions.
So as Ellie, because your surrogate father was killed in front of you, because she was right there, and they did it.
Yeah, and they pinned her down, and she just watched.
Made her watch like in a Clockwork Orange. And so she goes on a revenge quest, and then 12 hours later, you actually play as Abby, this person who killed Joel, and who you've been on a revenge quest for the past 12 hours trying to hunt down. And so people are pissed off.
And it's interesting because it seems like there are different sort of depths in which people are pissed off. There's, of course, the memers, like we mentioned before, the ones who kind of make up bullshit about the game just to, joke about it.
Yeah.
Right.
There are the folks who, they're fans of the first who, this is a visceral reaction. This is not what they came for. And I think that there is a level of folks who, and I think this is kind of the level that me and Nitroid want to discuss about, are folks who they're looking at it from, they get what the game is trying to put down. And I like to phrase it like this. I get what Neil is trying to paint. I just don't...
Wait, hold on. If you get it, please let me know. I've been trying to figure it out.
I get what he's trying to paint. I just don't know if this might have been the best canvas. Like, I love the whole idea of, somebody going out for revenge. You see one side of them kind of blazing through, killing everybody they can see in a roaring rampage, and then you kind of see the other side. I watched a game playthrough like Nitroid, and I thought those little details as you go through the same set pieces as Ellie and Abby were cool. That being said, maybe putting it beside a beloved IP people have been waiting for like 7 years, maybe not the best application of those themes. I can see this kind of concept being an interesting like indie game or something that like Suda51 made about like two sides to a revenge tale. But to do that to people who have been waiting 7 years and paying 60 to, I don't know, how much is the Ellie edition, to see these two characters interact, only for it to get cut short. I
didn't even think about that.
I can understand why some people would be upset.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I know why people are upset. And we have a dude who started an actual petition, please change the story. I did just because he didn't want Joel to die.
You did a mess.
From my perspective, you did a mess.
Okay.
That's what he says
Full
in the petition.
People who didn't expect Joel to die, Like, I've got a bridge to sell you, buddy. I always assumed that this game was going to be about Joel passing the torch to Ellie in this world, and I really wanted it to be about expanding the world as Ellie gets that torch passed. But at the same time, like Nitroid said, some of those moments, they feel a little unearned. Even though I was a bit apathetic to the first game, there were moments that really resonated with me. Actually, here's a great example. Henry and Sam's death in the first game, the little brother and the big brother, the little brother gets infected and the guy like shoots himself immediately.
Oh, that was rough. Yeah, I remember
that. That resonated with me, I would say, more than Joel's death in a way, just because the build-up, the execution.
Yeah, I remember it being really sudden. I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." Like I kind of didn't expect it, but also it made sense. Like
people were speculating that Joel was going to die from like the very first teaser of this game. They were like, "Oh, it's going to be like a ghost or something. It's going to be like a memory talking to her," and like that first trailer where she's playing the guitar and she's like, "I'm going to kill every one of them," and that scene that wasn't even in the game, was it?
No. But, games change. The game's been in development for 6 years. But, the story's definitely changed in that time.
But there's been this ongoing conversation, too, about part of the reason the term bait and switch is used is because the trailers made the game out to be something that arguably it was not.
Right.
And this is where the Metal Gear Solid 2 comparisons come in, because MGS2 very famously had trailers that showed Snake in place of Raiden in scenes of the game, boss battles in different areas, encounters that were completely different, and so on.
Right.
And this is what I was going to say earlier on the subject of there being a sort of dissonance where the two kind of don't quite approach that idea in the same way, and where the turn in The Last of Us 2 doesn't feel earned. So in Metal Gear Solid 2, there's this ongoing theme. It's presented gradually, both directly and through innuendo, that glorifying Solid Snake as a legendary figure isn't really a good thing. And to a large degree, Snake himself is a mouthpiece for this idea. So he's constantly telling you, like, legends are bad news. You shouldn't believe everything you hear about a legend, and so on, right? Like, he's aware of how messy his past is, and his entire arc in MGS2 is trying to overcome that. He's trying to make up for it.
Wait, who are we talking about? Snake?
Yeah,
or
we're talking about Solid Snake. So like
Solid Snake has an arc in MGS2?
Arguably you could say his arc in MGS2 is the tail end of his arc from MGS1. We could say that.
Okay, all right. Yeah, but that's the problem. It's like when you say arguably, that's open to interpretation.
So, but the point is that he's aware of his past and he's trying to make up for it. And he's acknowledging that, I did some bad stuff. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to make the world a better place. And ironically, the fact that he's constantly questioning his legendary status actually elevates him further.
Right.
And, Raiden is kind of chasing this ideal throughout the game, and then it falls apart throughout the course of the game. And eventually, Raiden realizes that he has a similarly messy, dirty, violent past, which he immediately balks at. So all this time he's chasing Snake's legend, realizes he's got the dirty past as well, and then is instantly ashamed of it, right?
Yeah.
So there's like those shifts are justified. The actions you take in the game, the killing, everything, it's not trying to glorify it, and there's not any sort of dissonance between what the game is saying and what the player's doing. In The Last of Us 2, I hope I'm articulating this well, because it's kind of difficult.
Yeah.
In The Last of Us 2, it seems to kind of lack this nuance. So throughout the game, you are taking lives left and right with little consideration.
As you do.
Right.
And the deaths of the NPCs themselves, they have gone out of their way to make as visceral as possible.
Going so far as to give the NPCs each names.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that when you kill one...
Short of kill cams, this, they take it to the extreme.
Galukovich soldiers, they had the dog tags.
Right. So like...
Yeah, but it's not like, you had a Galukovich soldier being like, Sergei! Oh, they got Sergei!
Right.
Oh, Bulyat! Suka Bulyat Sergey. No, you didn't see any of that.
Konami, if you're doing an MGS2 remake, write that down.
There you go.
No, don't do that.
So,
because that's the same thing as the dog. You're just manipulating me.
So all of the focus is on the narrative aspects of this revenge story and not on everything it takes to get there.
Okay.
To a degree, like the actual moments where you're engaged with other NPCs and enemies. There's, other than just like little very gory things, right? There's not really a lot of introspection on it. It's just like, oh, this is shocking and gross. You know, it shocks, but not much else. And then at the end of the game, when Ellie decides to let Abby go, it's like a switch flips in her head where she goes, "Oh, I guess this is bad. You can go."
Well,
it doesn't feel earned.
Yeah,
because there's not really any consideration of like, you took 100 lives getting here, and this last one you're gonna decide, oh, maybe I'm doing a bad thing.
Okay, so that's an excellent point. Now, Fingers, I gotta ask, how willing are you to go into spoilers? Because I know you're still playing the game.
I mean, we can go into it. It's fine. I mean, that's for me, it's mainly just a thing of perspective. Like this whole thing is just like,
okay,
Ellie's kind of seeing herself, or seeing a little bit of herself in Abby.
So there's a scene in The Last of Us 2 where Ellie kills these two people, and then after she kills them, she finds out that one of them was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like stricken with guilt. She's almost catatonic, and she decides that she's done. And so she goes with her girlfriend Dina, and they retreat to the countryside. Dina has her baby, and then they live peacefully until Tommy, Joel's brother, who was previously shot in the head, and he survived. And so Tommy comes to visit, and he's like, "I'm done with this. I don't want to kill no more." And Ellie's like, "Yeah, me too." But then that night, Ellie decides she can't forget about her revenge story, and she decides that she's going to go she's going to go back on a quest to hunt down Abby, because Abby had just killed Jesse. Anyway, so there is a scene where Ellie is like, she's contemplating about her actions, and she's feeling guilty about the pregnant woman she just murdered. And, and she almost decides that she's going to stop, but then she picks it back up again.
So it kind of falls flat. You see what I mean?
Yeah, right. But here's my thing with that. And here's why I think this game is unintentionally brilliant, because there's no way that the folks at Naughty Dog, of course they did an amazing job on the majority of the game, but they definitely didn't plan this, and it's a lot like what Kojima does. He does brilliant things by complete accident. So the thing about this game, and I was like, why the hell is this game 25 hours long? And why do they punish you for, like, if you keep playing? Everyone's talking about how the game is torture porn, and it's too violent, it makes you sick and numb, and all these things where the violence could have been more tasteful. And it's like, no, the game is long as hell because you decide when you've had enough. If you don't want Ellie to make these weird ass decisions that don't make sense, all you have to do is put down the controller. And especially that ending where it's like, you can't not. There's a scene where you have to pin Abby down, and there's like a quick time event where you have to shove a knife into her chest, but then at that at the last second, Ellie decides, after getting two of her fingers bitten off, she decides that she's she's not going to pursue revenge anymore. But the player doesn't have that choice. But as the player, if you had just turned the game console off right now, and hey, Druckmann actually said that MGS2 is one of his favorite games, so maybe if, that was him saying, if you actually just stop playing the game, Ellie doesn't make a nonsensical choice to pursue revenge when it doesn't make sense.
You're doing it. Stop hurting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
I do have to call you out on one thing, though, because given your let's say distaste of Metal Gear Solid 5, this kind of confuses me, because there's very much a similar sort of, you need to just kind of put down the gun and stop playing, otherwise you're going to be in an endless battlefield sort of mentality to that game.
I'm going to answer that question real quick, and then Daze was going to say something, but you are 100% right, and that scene is exactly what made me stop being a fan of the Metal Gear Solid series. That exact scene, when the game literally told me, hey, you shouldn't be a Metal Gear fan anymore because it's gotten you nowhere. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. What have I been doing wasting my time for the past 17 years? And here we are.
All right, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Days, you were saying?
So I don't mean to nitpick, but I just want to make sure we were talking today that we don't want anybody to be like, well, these assholes, their opinions are invalid because they got this scene wrong. But to clarify, okay, so Abby beats the shit out of Ellie and Tommy and Dina because they killed all their friends. And right before she's about to slice Dina's throat after, finding out she's pregnant and thinking, hey, one for one, I had a pregnant friend.
Not only that, she actually says good when she finds out that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Good.
We're supposed to see both sides, y'all. Anyways.
Gross.
She gets stopped by Lev, a companion that she saves from the religious cult that her clan or her army has a beef with. And the second thing I was going to say was when she's choking out Ellie or Abby in the water to kill her. And then she decides to kind of let her go. And I kind of, going back to the Metal Gear Solid 2 comparison, I was looking at it in parallel to the scene where Raiden takes off his dog tag. And he looks at it and you see your entry name, probably something like immature, like Assman 420. And he throws it out, and he
never heard the name before.
What he's doing is he's letting go of his role as this character sort of being controlled by the player. I think that what they were trying to go for when letting go of Abby was Ellie trying to let go of her role as this so-called savior of humanity that has this survivor's guilt that she can't think of a possibility where Joel, didn't kill all those people. To which goes back to my other point where, I get what they were doing, but maybe the execution could have been a little better.
Well, what substantiates that is the very last scene in the game where it's that last little flashback showing Joel and Ellie talking about, how she says she wants to try and forgive him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of cements what you're saying.
And another thing that really upset me, and it was somewhat of a retcon, was that Metal Gear gives you an agency in a sense that there are times where it lets you feel, the consequences of your actions. Whether that's, the sorrow, seeing your kills, seeing the kills at the end of the game, so on and so forth. I played the first one, and I could have sworn I did not massacre the Fireflies base. I'm a stealth gamer.
Yep, me neither.
But in the sequel, in the flashbacks, it showed the whole place getting slaughtered. And I get it, the one mandatory kill you have to do for that is Abby's dad. And by the way, it's self-defense because if you don't do anything, he'll shank you with the scalpel. But that was a little frustrating to me as well. Again, it goes back to that manipulation, oh, you're this monster. I get that I'm a monster, but, I tried my best not to be.
You know what surprises me is you look at Metal Gear and the build-up in Metal Gear Solid 3 to when you have to pull the trigger on the boss, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they go through all of this effort to show you things from Abby's point of view. I'm surprised they didn't have you actually swing the golf club yourself.
Good point. Yeah. They didn't do that, but they do have you at the end almost drown Abby and then attempt to stab her before Ellie decides not to.
Man, that would have made people put down the controller if they had to swing the golf club on Joel. They were like, I'm not going to do it. That would have pissed people off.
I don't think they would have.
The fans, they would definitely not want to do that. I mean, that would make them...
I don't think so. And the reason why is because they kept playing after Joel died.
Yeah.
And then they actually finished the game and went on YouTube to complain about it.
A lot of people just aren't playing it because they hear that or hear, I've seen a lot of people comment like that. They're just like, oh, I'm not playing it because of this. And it's just like,
I've heard that there are just a ridiculous amount of copies up for sale on like online sites, but I don't know if that's normal for new release games or if, I don't know what the numbers are.
I hear the game sold 5 million in like the first week. It sold 5 million.
Yeah, so they don't care. They made their money.
Right. And here's the thing, though. Here's the reason why you don't tell a story like that. The next time Naughty Dog, they can't make another Last of Us. They can't make any sort of serious story like this because people are going to remember what they tried to do in The Last of Us 2. And that's called the consumer contract. So it's in your best interest to tell a story that people are going to resonate with and like. Don't try to subvert. I mean, sure, subvert expectations, right? But don't intentionally try to make people upset and create controversy and to get people talking, because they were going for the Twitch reaction, to see people streaming the game and just to see the reactions on their face so they can do that stupid grid compilation of all the people like, yeah, they're gross. But that's what they were going for. Like when they killed Joel and you see spurts of blood coming out of his fractured skull, which I thought was some of the most beautiful fluid physics I've ever seen in a game. But, and the fact that they motion captured one of the most anatomically correct kiss scenes in the history of video games. They spent 6 years and all that money, and they tortured all those people in making them work 80 hours a week for 6 years out of their lives. And, this is why I've been following this game, because I don't want this type of game to get as much attention as AAA games have been in the past.
On a lighter note, I just pictured sort of like YouTube Twitch compilations of people discovering they have to play Raiden. Like, can you imagine that in 2020?
That was one of the things I was going to bring up, is there's been a lot of comparisons and questions of how Metal Gear Solid 2 was received when it first came out. And for anybody who was around back then, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah,
game,
I didn't have the internet, so I didn't hear any of it. I was 12, and I didn't care.
So that's a story in and of itself.
Right.
When it came out, it reviewed extremely well, and reviews were very careful to hide Raiden.
Hiding.
Right. Yeah, they were. And I still have a magazine that has a screenshot of Raiden, but he's wearing a gas mask, so you can't tell.
Yeah. And a lot of people were mad when they realized, you don't play a Solid Snake, even though there's a point to it. It really got people pretty upset. Didn't necessarily stop the sales, but I remember the reception to Metal Gear Solid 3 not being as warm. I hate to use the term, but there wasn't as much of a hype train for Metal Gear Solid 3 as there was for 2, because like you said, people were kind of aware, they had that memory of what happened the last time around, and they didn't want to have the rug pulled out from under them again.
And it technically was in a way.
Yeah, because Kojima refuses to let people play as Solid Snake again. It's funny, there was an old Metal Gear forum I used to regular, and I want to say about a month before the game hit retail, someone joined the forum and claimed to have gotten a leaked copy of the game and wrote out a synopsis of the story.
Okay, yeah.
And everybody read it, and it was this absolutely ridiculous story about how, after the first hour of the game, you switch to this new guy, and you're in a completely different area on an oil rig, and the whole thing is a recreation of Metal Gear Solid 1, and at the end, you find out that these AIs were doing it to control society, and blah, 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 and everyone was like, this is ridiculous, this can't be true, like, get out of here, dude.
That really happened?
Yeah, swear to God.
Whoa.
The game comes out, and we're like, oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, and specifically with regards to how AAA development is what is it gonna look like in the future? I have not played the game, but I was interested in Hellblade's development because of how it was made. It was essentially an experiment to see if they could make it
exactly.
Right, they wanted to see if they could do a AAA game on what was essentially a shoestring budget. I mean, they had $10 million and an existing development studio, but in AAA terms, that's nothing.
Yeah.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Right, but they managed
like The Last of Us 2 probably cost $250 million if you include the advertising budget.
Exactly. And they managed to make a successful AAA quality title on $10 million.
Right.
And a lot of people were saying, this is indicative of maybe a new trend. They were calling it like AAA independent gaming was something that they tried and I'm guessing didn't stick. But I mean, I think there's a model there for making these super high quality, long experiences, but not the way we're doing it now. And I mean, I'm not a, I don't run a games business, so I can't really speak to any sort of authority on it. But the fact that they were able to do that the way they did shows that at least there's another way.
So Hellblade had AAA quality graphics, but it definitely had indie quality mechanics. There wasn't really a lot of simulations that were being run. The combat mechanics were really simplistic, and the game got some minor criticism for being repetitive. So it definitely played like an indie game, but it did look like a AAA game, and that was successful. They were successful in achieving that goal.
So is that the result of the lower budget? Or is that the result of it just, it wasn't as well of a conceived game?
It just wasn't that deep of a game. Yeah, like as far as the gameplay went, it just wasn't that deep, but it was very sensual, and the way they recorded the audio was like crazy. The way that if you wore headphones and play that game, like that's the way to do it.
For sure. Yeah, and I can only imagine.
They did like 3D recording where they were like all running around the mic, and like I saw some little mini doc on it where they were just doing circles around this one mic, so they were getting this like 3D stereo thing going, but it's all the voices like of like 8 people just like saying stuff, so it actually feels like they were trying to replicate mental illness and like what the character was actually experiencing. So they did a good job on that part.
Oh, big ups to that, definitely.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, you look at something in terms of gameplay in smaller titles. The original Katamari Damacy had a budget of, I think, under $1 million. And that's one of the most fun games ever, and nobody really complained about that feeling like a non-AAA game. I mean, this is PlayStation 2 and it's cartoony, so it's not, we're comparing apples to oranges here a bit, but the point is, you don't need an enormous budget to make a good game.
No, but it's like you do need to create. The problem is that publishers feel like they need to create a game that justifies having that giant marketing budget. Because Katamari Damacy is a classic. It's one of the greatest games of all time. Everybody who's played it, there's not a single person alive who has played Katamari Damacy, and I normally don't go for cutesy games, but I love that game. It's simply amazing. But the fact that it was developed for less than $1 million, it also didn't sell like those like 5 million copies in a week like The Last of Us did.
But it did sell very well, and if I remember right, they even sold it as a discount. Wasn't it only like $20 or something when it came out?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for the industry to go more in that direction, but
you're seeing all these smaller indie titles that are made by tiny teams and don't have the the AAA polish,
right?
But they're making bank. I mean, how much money did Stardew Valley make, for crying out loud, or Untitled Goose Game, or Undertale?
Well, okay, so here's the problem: is that I'm sure we all think that that's fine, to have these games that might not look like a movie, which I'm all about. I'm like, stop trying to make games look like movies. If you want a movie, go watch one. But it's game publishers, their target demographic are the people who shop at GameStop, who go in and they ask, like, hey, so what are the games that people are talking about now? And, they look at the advertisement or they read Game Informer and they don't really care. They don't care about how much it costs to make games, which is why you have people that are starting petitions about The Last of Us 2 and why people are demanding that there be dynamic fluid simulations for blood effects, because they think that it's easy to implement this stuff. And, they're going to put down their $60 and they want to play something that reminds them of a blockbuster movie.
And that's... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's what the Last of Us 2, the Last of Us 1 and the Last of Us 2, that's why they were made. That's why you have games like The Order 1886, with the black bars, because, they wanted to make it look as realistic as possible, but they couldn't actually get the resolution and to work with a stable frame rate. So
Is that damn? I didn't know that's why they had. I thought that was just like a presentation thing.
That's kind of hilarious.
no, and the Evil Within 1 on PS4, I think later they released a patch, but the frame rate takes a hit if you get rid of the black bars. So that's how they cheat. Instead of being 1080p, it's actually running
I hated the way that like how zoomed in that game felt.
Yeah,
that was kind of limiting.
The thing I was trying to circle around to, and I didn't quite get there, and the reason I brought up Katamari Damacy was if you look at Hellblade and the fact that they were able to have those AAA fidelity graphics on a $10 million budget, and then you look at indie games and they're able to have gameplay that is arguably more fun than most AAA games, there has to be a way to reconcile these two sensibilities so that you can make
there absolutely is
fun games that have AAA quality production value without sending a team of 200 employees into crunch for 3 years. It's like
not even that. Like Assassin's Creed, that development team is 300 people minimum.
Jeez.
This game with all the, like, if you're talking the marketing team and the lawyers and all that, 500 people worked on this game. That credits roll goes for an hour. But why are games made this way is because people demand them and people keep buying it. 5 million copies were sold of this game. You really think another publisher's not going to see that and be like, dude, we gotta make our version of The Last of Us.
Somebody needs to break the mold, and if they can make a successful game that breaks the mold, then everybody else will follow.
Businesses are also looking for like the Call of Duty model. Like, you guys keep on mentioning games that came out before 2007. Now I think every sort of big developer, every big publisher is just looking for that golden egg, that game that doesn't take much time to develop, but can go through like those yearly cycles and have a safe sales numbers.
It's a terrible way to be creative.
Wait a second.
It's
Hold
a
on.
terrible way to be creative, but it's a great way to secure the bag.
You guys, I feel like I just ripped open a rift in the time-space continuum, but isn't Konami ahead of the game on this?
I was gonna say
this is exactly why they shut down their AAA games division, so they could make pachinko machines.
I will say Konami right now is actually doing something really cool. Their new game that they didn't develop, but they're publishing for these indie studios now. They have a game out called Skell Attack, and that game's actually really fun. I've been having a good time with it.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, they seem to be steering more into indie publishing.
And yeah, definitely I've been having more fun with the indie stuff, because I guess just being like a retro type gamer, that's just like more what I normally just grew up on and enjoy. Like, I enjoyed that part of gaming.
Even before the obvious
sure.
shift away from AAA development, and they've said they're not completely done with it, but they were already kind of dipping their toes in that direction, in that pool a bit. Mm-hmm. You look at Super Bomberman R, which that's not really a AAA game, but it was developed with Unity, and as far as I know, that's the first Konami title that was developed with Unity.
Wow.
Somebody might correct me on that. I don't actually know, but I remember hearing that it was a Unity game and going, oh, whoa, so Konami's using that now. But that was also the impetus behind the Fox engine, was to simplify their process. Save time, make it easier for artists to throw things in on the fly and not have to rely on constant back and forth with the development team.
I don't know if you saw, they actually, I read that recently, where they said the Fox engine was actually really difficult to utilize, so that's why it wasn't really used in a lot of other things.
That's a shame.
Wow.
Yeah, they initially thought it was going to be so easy, but like other people were looking at it like, we don't know how to steer this ship. Like, what the fuck?
I was always wondering if they would, if the Fox engine had taken off, if they would have licensed it out, kind of like Epic does with Unreal.
I mean, they could, but I don't think they had the resources to support it the way Unreal does. And, to Finger's point about indie games being more fun, I think that's kind of, when you're making an indie game, your objective is to make it fun, for the most part. You want something that people will will play and really something you don't really have to think about. You know, like you're trying to recreate that feeling of jumping in Super Mario or Sonic. But the main reason why I play games, you know, even if I play a fun game as a diversion, the main reason why I go to games as my primary source of entertainment is to play a story. And that's really difficult to do in the indie space because you got to have a lot of resources to tell a compelling story.
Yeah.
And when you don't have a lot of resources.
I think a good example of that, Katana Zero, they did like a really good job with like just making that lore really deep and kind of like messing with your head with like, wait, did that really happen? And was that little girl really there? And like, there's like conspiracy theories around that game and just like, you know, just different stuff going off of it. But it plays just like Hotline Miami. You know, it's like you can definitely have a deep narrative that can screw with your head and do a, you know, bait and switch. Even, the Hotline Miami games did that too.
Absolutely, yeah. But those games, they also had a publisher, which was Devolver.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's rare and it's more difficult to go out as an indie studio to tell a compelling story through gameplay. It's, you know, you're going to get more return on your investment if you just make something that's fun, like Katamari Damacy or what's another good example?
Ape Out. Have you played that?
I have played Ape Out. Hell yeah, absolutely.
That's a fun game.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the story? You're an ape. You're trying to get out. Ape out. And that's it. So, but you're not like, you know, because all the text that you have to implement if you're if you're doing a text-based adventure, hiring voice actors. Because I've been playing The Outer Wilds. Mm-hmm. You guys heard of that? Yeah. Game's a freaking technical marvel. I don't know how they pulled it off. I need to watch the making of documentary after I finish it. But there's no voice acting in the game, and that kind of turns me off, and it makes me not really want to sit there and read, because it's like, if I want to read a book, I can pick up a book. I'm playing this game so that I can interact and actually be an existing entity in this world that you're building. And I feel like it's more passive.
It does seem like indie games tend to be more gameplay centric, whereas the bigger AAA games, you know, major studio games tend to be more story centric.
Right. And so that's the thing, is that when you have a game that's story based, like God of War or The Last of Us, people think that the best way to tell a story is by making a movie, which is why you have all these cutscene intensive games like Metal Gear Solid.
Meanwhile, over in movies, they're trying to make movies more like games.
Exactly, right? What's going on here?
I don't know, man. Everybody's mixed up.
Closing thoughts, everybody.
Well, you know, I don't want to completely shit on The Last of Us 2 for this whole thing. So I do want to mention some positives here. You know, you guys are talking about gameplay. Going back to the gameplay, I did want to note, I mentioned that I'm waiting for this all to blow over so I can buy it for the cheap. Buy it on the cheap. But I love the stuff that they're doing with sort of the interactive NPCs, like luring clickers into humans, luring scarves into wolves. I think I made this comment in the notes, but it's like everything that I wanted from MGS4 Chapter 1, except that Kojima never did that again in the game.
I know exactly what you mean.
Don't get me started on Chapter 1 of MGS4. Don't do it. We'll be here another hour.
No,
we're not going to do that. But
well, yeah. So the game is good, right? But the purpose of The Last of Us 2 is not to be a game; it's to be a story. In my eyes, I mean, I should preface that.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it does tell a story. I'm soaking in the story as I go. It's okay. There's some cringy dialogue along the way, but there's some also pretty good heartfelt dialogue that, you know, it gets you up in your feels. And it definitely, I think, what was the one quote Neil said? It's not a fun game. I don't think that's the most accurate. Like, I'm having fun with it. I can see what he meant. Like, he's like, yeah, you're gonna have a bad time. It's like, okay, cool, whatever.
Like Spec Ops.
Yeah, it's basically this feeling that I've felt before. So I'm just kind of desensitized to it. But it's some of the best stealth mechanics I've seen in a game since the Phantom Pain. The way the enemies,
that's high praise.
The way the enemies track you, and
I mean, that's what else can you say?
The way they like search an area it's very thorough. The dogs like will actually pick up a scent trail from you. Like just like there's plenty of good gameplay mechanics, enough for me to forgive the story if it does a couple things that the fans didn't want it to do. Because that's really, it just seems like a tantrum kind of. They're like, but I didn't want it to go that way. It's kind of like The Last Jedi pretty much, which I can give a little more, allowance to people being upset over that. But, for me, it just seems like people just being upset that their fave got killed. And that's kind of just where I see it.
I definitely think it's a technical marvel. It's incredible how much we're able to do with games now. You go back and look at early FMV movies and PS1 games, and then you look at where we are now with in-game graphics, and it's just astonishing. In terms of physics, in terms of graphical fidelity, it's marvelous to look at. But I'm kind of like Vector in that I play games for a story. I'm more of a single player guy than a multiplayer guy. I don't play a lot of multiplayer games.
Same.
I know this isn't a multiplayer game, but I do play more for the story aspect. And so the fact that I wasn't really all that interested in the first one to begin with, just kind of, I said it before, it just didn't really grab my attention, other than, wow, look at what they did. And it also...
Yeah, I completely understand that.
It's also a kind of a thing where, like... everybody throws the term around subverting expectations, and we've seen character bait and switch done before. I've seen this trick so many times that it's lost its effect on me. So
yeah,
it's like, okay, yeah, I've seen it before. What else you got?
Yeah, I got 2 points to add, to riff off of that. And the first is I completely relate to not vibing with the first game because, as of 2013, the whole world had just been zombied out by The Walking Dead. And, personally, I feel like if you're going to tell a story in a zombie apocalypse, you've already failed from the outset. But that's just me. The second point is, to all the people that are complaining about, that this story wasn't what they wanted and they want something better. I got no sympathy for those guys, because there was only one game before The Last of Us 2 for fans of this franchise. I had to play Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, 4, Peace Walker, and then Phantom Pain on top of a bunch of games like Acid and Ghost Babel and all this other information that I've accumulated over the course of 15 to 20 years before my hopes and dreams were ripped out from under me. So, you guys haven't even begun to suffer.
It's like that meme that's just like first time and dude's just like sitting there like about to get executed.
I was going to say, or that Twitter post where it was like, show me a video game character who has gone through more.
Oh, that list is
everybody's like...
Yeah, everybody's like, oh, okay, let's go in.
Did I post? I saw David Hayter had a response to that.
Man, even he was riffing on it.
Yeah, that was some ordinary gamer that he replied to. It's like, dude.
What, was that his handle, or was that...
ordinary gamers on Twitter. He's like,
okay.
Old Snake walked through a microwave hall, bro. He contracted like 7 different cancers that day, but okay. And Hater just underneath was like, they didn't have to wait too long, I guess. The post was like, I'll wait while y'all tell me who went through more. Yeah, that's what I posted earlier.
I'm gonna go with the pain.
It reminded me of a post that happened all before this shit went down, where somebody posted something like, tell me a better video game soundtrack than Mick Gordon's Doom. Go ahead, I'll wait. And then just like Twitter just went off on it. Which,
you want to know an easy way to get retweeted. There you go. Tell me a better X than Y.
There you go. That's the manipulation that Naughty Dog did with show me a better dog than this one that you just stabbed.
But you didn't, there's no other dogs in Naughty Dog.
Was that the commentary that we're making? Like, oh, we're Naughty Dog, and this is Jackass. So here's a dog, and you're gonna stab it. We're gonna make you feel bad about killing the dog because we're Naughty Dog.
It's even worse when the people see that I shot a dog with a bow and arrow, and the guy was just like, "Fuck, man, they killed my dog!" Like he was like really just like upset by that, but not all the other people that I had killed before that he had seen.
Well, here's the thing, imaginary video game man. You don't exist. Neither does your dog.
No.
QED.
I'm gonna shoot it. It's in my way.
Yeah, like if people are like making things on Twitter like, please don't make me kill a dog in a video game. I'm like, I don't know. Ever since like Call of Duty
If you
3,
kill a dog
like,
in this game,
since Ninja
if you kill a
Gaiden
dog,
on NES, like what the hell are those? Those were dogs. I didn't give a shit about them.
Guys,
Right.
if you kill
If you
the
kill a
dog in the
dog-
video game, does it die in real life?
does it still go to heaven?
Do all Naughty Dogs go to
The
heaven?
real question is, can I pet that dog?
If
Oh,
Neil
man.
Druckmann really wanted to get his point across, he should have let us full ton the WLF soldiers to put as Ellie's army.
Yeah, there is a no like non-lethal way to deal with anybody really. It's definitely all just like kill or kill harder.
Can you non-lethal the game?
Nope. I mean,
Okay.
there might be parts where you can just like sneak through, but a lot of it seems like you have to kill for sure.
There's at least one dog that you can't not kill because it's like a quick time event. And then Days, you were talking about how they make you kill that dog, and then you see the dog's backstory.
So I guess the takeaway from this episode is support your local animal shelter.
Yeah.
The more you know. Dun 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 dun.
The
I got nothing more to say about it.
point
Yeah.
of the story is whenever a massive AAA game comes out that's rife with controversy, wait a couple weeks and get it for half price.
And I suggest playing it. It's got pretty good stealth in it.
Yeah,
And just ignore the story if you want. I don't know.
I really am looking forward to playing it.
Yeah.
I keep watching
Yeah, I
clips
might
of
try
people
it.
going like full John Wick with Ellie, and
Yeah, the combat in it and the gunplay is damn good. And you know, you've got like upgrade trees and skill trees that make you better. You can take little pills that make you better in certain trees. So that's, you know, I've kind of just been like looking at all the hate and just going, I'm gonna play a video game. And that's kind of what it is to me. It's just another video game. Hopefully they
Okay.
Good old
Hey,
video games.
They might make a sequel where Abby and Ellie team up together. That's why they couldn't.
Okay.
You
You know what?
Off, you know.
Fingers, you just shut your mouth. No.
I knew that would piss you off.
So it turns out, you guys, Abby is actually Ellie from the future. Okay, and
No,
No, we're gonna play a sequel where you have to play as old Ellie to go and hunt down Abby one last time.
are they gonna give?
But Abby has been taken over by Tommy's disembodied spirit.
oh my god,
no, you're Ellie, and you get woken up by Joel playing guitar, and it was all a dream.
it was all a dream.
God, if they would have actually ended it like that, can you imagine the reaction?
That'd be even worse.